Ever wonder what's involved with setting up a bakery from scratch? Well, today we're going to dive into exactly what's involved with setting up a bakery all the way from the beginning. On our Instagram, we have a series called FSO where we examine different small businesses, address their problems, where we go through fixing, optimizing, well, scaling, then optimizing. So we look at the problem that the business has, fix their issue, then make another video on how to scale it, and then we have another video on optimizing, released Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. However, here we're going to take all of that and start from the beginning. We're not addressing the business that's already working. We're going to set everything up from the beginning and see what's involved with the cost, the pricing, how we should set things up in terms of what we're selling to customers, as well as how much we should put into marketing, for example, or how we're going to create these sales channels for these different businesses. Today is just about the bakery, though, and we're looking at starting a vegan dessert shop from scratch. This is going to involve having 5 cakes a day, 100 cookies a day, 3 base flavors, 2 new seasonal flavors, and 5 basic coffees. This will be our daily inventory. As you'll see, I'm going to change this number as we go further on, but this is just what we started with as an idea, as a concept. The flavors are more of a selling point. They don't really affect our cost that much because we've factored in that we're going to include other ingredients that are going to be able to allow us to make different changes to the cakes and cookies that we make. So it's not like our prices are going to change that much. So we've just baselined it out. Let's look at supplies. So supplies are going to be the usual flour, eggs, sugar, all that, but we also added in those pieces like I mentioned, so we can add variety to what we bake, which is like the vanilla, cocoa, spices, dried fruit, citrus, all of that, and then usual salt, baking powder, baking soda, all that. These are our variable costs. So if we produce a cookie, it's going to cost this much of these variable ingredients. If we don't produce a cookie, we won't have to pay that much. That's the whole idea there. Pretty straightforward. But when we're setting up the business, we have to also consider fixed costs. These fixed costs are things that don't change. We make something, we don't make something, it's going to cost the same. Obviously, you're going to have electricity and gas and all that stuff. That's going to have a factor, but as for that, we're going to bake into maintenance costs. So we're just going to say that's going to cost as much for maintenance, and then lease as well. We're going to assume something like that on the lease side, where the lease is going to factor in electricity built in because our lease is going to be at a location in a mall. That comes up soon, but this is just our fixed costs. They're just going to be the machinery that we need to make the dough, make the cookies, bake everything, set up the icing. And we have an espresso machine because we're going to add coffee to our selling point as well. It's not just going to be buy a cake, buy a cookie, buy a cake, buy a cookie, sit here and have a coffee. Kind of a more experience than just buying a cake and then your mouth gets dry and you want to have like something to drink, but there's only water or something. So coffee's key, especially because a lot of places do that now. We can't just be selling one thing when everybody wants coffee with something or something with coffee. So we also need to look at employees. Employees are a big thing because in our previous one with the homemade candles, we touched on setting everything up solo, then hiring people as we went along. However, here we can't do that. We can try. It can just be this little small thing where we make things in the morning and then we just sell them throughout the day and we just run that on our own. However, we also have to consider that we're going to be trying to build a business that can scale, have a good revenue coming in, and we don't want to stretch ourselves or exhaust ourselves. A lot of people who have done that end up in this kind of fight of trying not to burn out, trying to do this 5 days a week and not get exhausted by working 12-hour days, 14-hour days, and having to get the produce, get all that. So we want to just make our lives easier with the bare minimum and hire 6 people. We're going to hire 3 bakers who are going to be involved in making those cakes, those cookies, getting everything set up and produced and ready to be sold. 2 baristas/cashiers, which are going to be the people that are at the front desk. They're going to be there. They're going to say, hey, can I take your order? Blah, blah, blah. Then they're going to make the coffee, package up the cookie, package up the cake, and then that goes to the customer. They're going to be there. Obviously, we could have a barista separate from the cashier, but we just think it's easier to have the 2 set up, and then we just keep rotating them. When one's busy, one goes to the cash, and the other one's busy, the other one goes to the cash. Keep it simple. Then there's you, us, who are the supervisors. We're going to look at basically supervising everything, making sure operations go good, getting the right produce, supplies, everything, just managing the whole setup. If we're needed in the front, we're going to help in the front. If we're needed in the back, baking the goods, we're going to be there. Basically, we want to include us in the payment because we are starting this from scratch. So let's say it's our first business, so we don't have any other income coming in. We don't want our stresses from our normal life to get involved in our setup of this business. So let's just pay us a bare minimum along with everyone else. So let's look at costs. Costs are going to be machinery. So 50K for the machinery, 95K to set up. 95K to set up sounds steep, but it's because we're going to be renovating the space. We're going to be adding in new chairs. We're going to be adding in this machinery. We're going to be painting the walls, all of that stuff. That's going to have a cost because this is a new lease. We're just starting out this business. So it's important to factor that in. And then servicing, which is going to be getting the electricity plugged in, hydro, electricity, gas, all that. Locally, we call it hydro, but just getting those amenities set up so that when the machinery is plugged in, it works, no problems. That's 20K. And then rent is 9.5K a month. So that's because we're going to be in a mall. It's going to be in a place that has decent foot traffic. We also factoring that we're going to have to pay for, electricity and gas is included into this rent. So it's going to be on the steeper side. And this is usually what we see around with the clients that we go talk to. So employees. With us having 6 employees, it's going to cost around 15K because we're paying everyone a base of 2.5K. Obviously, if we're going to hire someone who's has a higher expertise, we're going to bump up their salary and reduce another one and hire someone who is new to the business and we can pay them a bit less. But we're just baselining it at 2.5K. Those levers can change depending on who we hire, but our max is going to be 15K as our budget to pay everyone monthly, including ourselves. Obviously, if we need to eat into our salary, we can to pay for someone who's better, who brings more to the business. But right now, we're just focusing on the people who are getting the business functioning with the barista, with the cashier, with the bakers. And then we have us who are doing like socials and we're also doing social media along with our other operations as a supervisor just to get that going. So that touches onto social presence. Social presence is going to be Shopify, getting our website set up, getting our info about who our business is, like who we are as a business, and then CapCut, which is going to be $10 a month, paying for an editing tool that's very good, very useful. It has all the trendy stuff. We don't have to worry too much about paying any pro right now. We can keep it very simple. And then ads, $300 a month. We just want to be promoting our stuff, boosting on Instagram, boosting on TikTok, just getting our stuff out there in front of people to our local area and dedicating a budget to that just to bring more foot traffic in. Because we can't always rely on a mall's foot traffic because sometimes they're going to be very busy, sometimes they're going to be kind of empty, but we want to build our own set of clientele, set of demand. So that's our cost calculation. Let's look at our variable cost setup. So we're going to make 230 cookies. Remember how I said 100 before? Well, when we looked at the numbers, the math didn't really add up with turning a profit, so we had to bump up the cookie production. But because we have 3 employees, this is very, very doable because we are going to be baking large batches. We have the equipment to bake a lot of things at the same time, so we can make 200 cookies a day. But we're doing 230, which is going to be 101. 12 cakes, it's going to cost $440. That's going to be meaning that 12 cakes means that we're going to have 144 slices to sell because each cake is 12 slices. So we have that broken up into 12 pieces because obviously we're not going to make people buy a giant cake if they just want a little dessert. So we'll just do a slice. And then we can obviously multiply that cake by 12, the price that we do for the slice by 12 to give them the entire cake as one selling point. But our main piece is we're selling a cake by slices. But we're going to expect a loss of 30 cookies and 2 cakes. This is just because a cake may not rise. There may be a malfunction. We may mess up a batch with our baking. Whatever it may be, some hiccups happen. People get tired. This happens all the time. We just want to assume that there's some loss. So this is going to be the loss that we factor. So we can only sell 200 cookies for that day and 10 cakes. This way, we don't have to worry too much about if we underproduce, we're at a bind. This is the max that we're going to set up. So that's just a consideration when we look at the numbers and the revenues that we're going to pull in and how much we can sell for the day. Obviously, if we're able to make everything perfectly for a day, we can sell more, which means we pull in more revenue. But let's assume a baseline with some loss. Coffees, lattes, 89 cents, pretty straightforward. We're going to assume, okay, this is the price for producing a latte. We're going to obviously have a lower price if we're making just an espresso or a black coffee, but we want to assume the highest price just because this is just a side piece. It's not our main selling point, so let's just assume the worst, and anything that comes in as extra cash, bueno, we're good. So, product pricing. We're starting off with the cookie being $3.99, espresso $3.50, cake slice $9.99, latte $4.99. Pretty doable prices, especially for what we're seeing now where these prices are going up and you can get a coffee for $7, you can get a slice of cake for $12, $13, $14. It's really like the prices vary, but let's be at a kind of a selling point, and that's where we're going to set these prices up. And then we're going to look at what happens if we clear inventory. So if we're able to sell everything, we end up pulling in cookies and cake, just not the coffee yet, just cookies and cake. We end up pulling in $1,996. Assume we have a foot traffic around 300 people, which is pretty normal for a mall. And we have those people coming into our store and half buy an espresso. We'll assume, yeah, they can buy a latte, but let's just say they all buy an espresso. So we have the lower price calculated. Then we have a revenue of $525. Same principle, we want to focus on the lowest sold and the highest cost for these coffees because it's just a extra add-on. We can add variants after if we start getting into more artisanal type of coffees. So looking at that together, our profit before labor with dessert plus coffee ends up being $2,066.90. That's because we've taken out the expense, the variable cost of producing all those. Obviously, it'd be around like 2.5, I think, if we were to put it all together. But this is how much it costs with those expenses before the labor cost, which gives us 41,000 after the 20 days for the month. So our 41,000 comes because we're only operating for 20 days, 5 days a week. Let's just not do weekends and for now and holidays for now, just because obviously malls will close those times. Malls will be busy on weekends, but we maybe close on a Monday or something. Let's just kind of add a very basic setup for this, and then we can add more to it as we go on. Plus, we're gonna have to pay our employees more, so we have to consider that factor as well. But yeah, obviously malls are open on Sunday, so we'll have to tweak that a little bit and maybe work on weekends. We close on a Monday or something. Let's just see how that works out when we're actually operating. But let's assume a baseline of 20 days. So that gives us 41,000 to pull in. Labor and marketing comes up to a total of 15,365, which was just our social presence plus the 15K put together. This is expense. And then we have a total profit of 25,973 per month. 25K per month comes in after producing all the goods and selling everything. That's clearing inventory completely. Obviously, if we're not clearing inventory, our focus is going to be what can we put our energy into to get that inventory completely cleared, and then we have a new break even or baseline setup. So with this profit, we can look at what happens with the fixed costs. So what's going to happen at the end of the year? How much money will we have in a total profit because we've just set up the business and spent all that money setting up the business. So fixed cost for the year ends up being 25K times 11 months. Let's assume that we're not working certain holidays or we're not working on Christmas or whatever it may be, renovations or whatever happens, right? Let's assume 11 months we're working, 20 days a month. Very simple. We have $285,000 coming in. And then we have an expense for that first year being $279,200. This is the setup, the machinery, all of that we mentioned before, those fixed costs. That's what this is going to fit into. And then we end up with a profit of 6,000, which is a very tight margin. 6,500. I mean, one bad month, that profit disappears completely. So we have a little bit of a sticky issue there. But we can look at year two where it starts to look a bit better, where if we're just focusing on rent and service now because our machinery setup, our renovations are done. We don't need to do much else other than servicing and paying for rent. We have $139,000 coming in, our expense, which is going to be our cost for the year. And then we have a profit coming in of 146,000 because of that reduced expense. So the second year looks better, but the first year doesn't look that great. So we should do something about that, which means we're going to change the price a bit. We're going to tweak something here instead of focusing on tweaking the expenses on the cost of the goods. Let's change the price that we sell our goods at. This means that our cookie is going to go up by $1 to $4.99. Espresso goes up by $1, $4.50, and latte goes up by $1 to $5.99. This looks a lot better, and it's not that much of a change because if you look around, like you go to other places in our area where we do business, we see a lot of places that are selling coffees for $4.50. Some are selling it for $6, and that's an espresso for $6, which to me is kind of crazy because I mean, like it's in $1 an espresso, but whatever. And then a latte as well. You can make a latte that's like $12 because you add this, you add that, add these customizations. So a $6 latte as a cap maxed, I mean that's pretty good. We don't have to worry too much about difference there, and it's pretty normal in the market standard where we're looking at this from. So for now, it's pretty good. Now, if we clear inventory, as we discussed before, we end up with a new revenue of $2,196. Same principle. 300 people are rotating into our shop, half buy an espresso, and we have $675,000 coming in, which means in our yearly profit, we have changed something. So now we have $28,000 coming in every month times 11 months means we have $314,000 as revenue. Now we factor in that first year setup of $279,000. We end up with a profit of $335,000, which is very different than the $6,000. It's even more than how much we pull in every month. This is very, very good now because now we have a lot of wiggle room. If we have 2 bad months, we're good this way. We can actually make a difference in how we operate, and our revenues look even better. So year two, we only have that $139,000 expense of service and rent, which means that we have a profit of $175,000 coming in for the year two. At that rate, we have enough money to build an entirely new location, because if we go back to how much it was before, we were spending $279,000 on those fixed expenses. So give it one more year. Year three, we can have enough profit to put back in the business and set up an entirely new location. Or with this $175,000, we can hire new employees, hire better goods, sell more, buy larger in bulk. So much variety now with this profit that we're pulling in, and that makes a huge difference for our business and the way we operate. So as you can see, there's a lot of benefit that comes from making those slight tweaks, knowing the numbers of the business, knowing what goes into what and how much each thing costs. We went through every single detail from the price of flour down to the price of the spice, added it all up and saw what we could change in terms of variable costs or in terms of cost of selling price, right? And so here we thought selling price would be the best, and you can see the huge difference with adjusting that selling price. Let's briefly touch on sales channels to kind of give you an idea on how we would build out this business if we were starting to market it now. So everything's set up, our projections are good, here's our numbers, here's our metrics. That looks great. But obviously we have to get these people coming in, and we can try and get more people coming in by building larger sales channels. So first, our website. Our website is product demos. We just want to show what we're selling, kind of give people a experience as they look at our website. They know the quality that we're going to work with. A low quality website, if you find a company on Google Maps and you go on their website and it's just like, oh, we're a coffee shop and there's nothing else to it, it's very boring Wix kind of setup, there's not much to it, and you're just going to be like, okay, I'm a bit skeptical. But if you go to someone's website and you're like, wow, this looks really, really good, it's a nice selling point to bring people to your business, to bring more interest, especially when you create those cravings just by looking at it, right? You see a cake and you're like, man, that really looks really good. I kind of want to go and try it. So that's just product demos, store descriptions, add a bit of background about what we do, who we are, why we're starting this business, all that. Payment processor is very nice because Shopify allows you to do payment processing, so we can do that for our in-store. Kind of adds a little bonus. And then we have our social media. We're going to run our ads. We're going to post content. We're going to make branding content, build an identity, have employee-based content, introduce the world to who works at our shop, introduce them to our identity as a business, really kind of add more character, because there's a lot of companies who just post on Instagram, just show their food, show their drink, show their seasonal stuff. And yeah, it's there. Yeah, you know it's there, but there's no draw. There's no like, oh, I relate to this person working in the bar. I feel like if I go here, I'm a bit awkward, and this seems like a very welcoming place. I know the people. I almost feel like I know them. And then you can go and talk to the people at the front of our shop and buy our goods and stuff. So there's a little difference in the way people operate now. Especially with like online presences and social content creators and everything, people feel like drawing a connection to those identities, those personas. So I'm injecting that into our business with the people that we have, and them creating content and what it's like working in our business, and all of that adds more of a personality that people can connect to and give them more incentive and draw towards coming to get goods at our business and spending time in our shop. So that's just kind of socials and online presence. We can touch into more offline, I would say, setups, which would be other sales channels where we're just collaborating, right? We're going to set up partnerships with other businesses, host people there who are having like a little parties or something, who want to celebrate like a tea, for example, like a tea and a cake or a tea and a cookie, invite them, set up a little thing in our kiosk where we sell our goods or our cash out, and they can give the tea to the customers as well as sell our cakes, right? We can host kind of little cross branding where it's like a makeup company's releasing a product and we can invite them to come to our place, and we can give out the goods to their influencers or clientele that they want to have to demo this product. There's a lot of that happening now where different businesses are setting up coffee shops for their product base to kind of add more of a lifestyle behind it. So this gives us a huge range to open up our business with. Private events are huge too. Someone wants to celebrate with their business or have people there, or whatever it may be, we can open up our space to let people come in for a certain amount of time and give them the cakes, the cookies, the coffee. We can supply that and we can bring in additional revenue that way. Seasonal release parties are huge too. I mean, we have bring in a little DJ, have them playing some music, have a little party that says, hey, get a cake, get a free coffee, buy a cookie, get an espresso, just things like that. Very, very simple things that we can inject into our seasonal releases or seasonal flavors that add more of an atmosphere to our place, that give it that lifestyle appeal. That's huge. So with all that being said, you kind of have an idea on what's involved with setting up this business, how much things are going to cost, what the prices are, what the metrics are, what happens if you run into this problem with a little bit of a profit issue where you're like, this is too tight, we can change something here. We showed you what happens if you change just by $1. And that changes everything for the business. And then we looked at the sales channels, what ideas we can put together to bring more profit, more revenue into the business. So with that being said, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Comment your thoughts. Please like, subscribe, and if you want more, and then hit the notification bell if you are subscribed, hit the notification bell to wait for our next video, which means our next video is probably going to be about the candle business coming out, where we talk about the branding, or we're going to have another branding on this business where it's going to talk about what it's involved with branding this business to kind of fit that vegan dessert shop setup, and how we would design the kind of the aura and the personality of the business, as well as the colors and the fonts and the name and all of that. And then next week we're touching on a boutique fitness business. So excited to share that with you. Stay tuned for more. Have a good day.